Lesson 4, Formative and Summative Assessment. The role of assessment is critical within our designated mastery-based learning. Each unit, as we've already said, has a baseline assessment, which you can see here. Within this assignment, there's a rubric that has all of the success criteria that the students are going to be connecting and developing. Remember that these are specific to the proficiency level of each student, which means if a student is emerging, in order to get advanced on the learning goal, use language to connect ideas and clauses attentionally, that would mean that that student within that learning goal has demonstrated that she is no longer an emerging student, but in fact has moved into the expanding level. So realize that the grading is dynamic by proficiency level. A bridging student may have a far more developed baseline assessment, but receive a lower score than an emerging student taking that same assessment. The baseline assessment should not be used as a grade in the course. A student needs to establish where she is so that she can prove her growth. So this baseline assessment should never appear as a grade toward that credit, no credit. On the other hand, the growth assessment is something that can show growth. The growth assessment should be a summative measure. Again, however, you're comparing that student's growth on the same grading scale, but by proficiency level. A student who is emerging in one strand might be expanding in another. Likewise, a bridging student could demonstrate a bridging proficiency level in everything except for perhaps one, where she might be expanding. Along the way, there are also other opportunities for formative assessment, as we've already seen with the feedback on the end of each phase of learning. But at times, those assessments may demonstrate significant growth, and you may want to assign that instead of as a formative assessment, you may choose to change that to a growth measure. Looking for example, in this unit at the final draft, while it's a draft, you might choose to create a rubric for it. So instead of mastery-based grading, creating a scale. Notice, however, in this scale, if you're going to be using it for summative growth, that each student is not going to be receiving a score in each criteria or strand right here, because since this has been optimized for all proficiency levels, you'll see all three proficiency level standards there. If a student is, let's say, an emerging student, she would not be scored on the expanding or bridging standard, only the emerging standard. With that, if this is what you want to choose to design for your course, you might choose to make 3 different assignments for this final draft, one for emerging, one for expanding, and one for bridging, where the criteria is the standard at that proficiency level, as well as the success criteria. Look through this unit and see where might some formative checkpoints be summative in your eyes, realizing that this is extremely flexible and you may begin by thinking something is summative and change it. And likewise, you can change something that you believe is formative into summative if you see critical growth within your students.